I have some fact news and exclusive on Patreon, so please don't share yet, but you can in probably about 10 days or a week or something like that. Cat Collects, that's our own sort of little name label, it's DIY really, is bringing out 2 vintage cleaners from Venus things on CD and cassette. We've got In the Golden Autumn and we've got Songs for a Fallow Land. It's In the Golden Autumn I need to start remembering, because the next few editions of my Patreon talks and demonstrations and that will concern themselves with how I made these cassettes. I'm going to have to rack my poor old straining brain to do that, because this goes back to 1983. 1983. I had just been. We brought out Midnight Cleaners a little bit earlier. We had no idea that Cleaners from Venus would be a known name in the world today. That, you know, this was Cleaners from Venus. Midnight Cleaners was our 3rd cassette. I don't think anyone really took much of it seriously, but we had sold about 100, which was a big deal for a couple of, you know, anarchist boys, I suppose. And sort of round about 1983, I thought, what am I going to do next? Because Lowell had left, and I had got my first contract to write a book. I'd even been given a bit of the advance. Now this is a separate story covered in another book of how I believed I was living on an advance when in fact I wasn't, because the advance kind of came in dribs and drabs and ruined my life. But one of the success stories of that summer, which kind of went by the by, because I thought there I was writing my first book, having been paid for it nearly, I was making this in the gaps in between. And whereas the book kind of got off on the diving board and did a massive belly flop, didn't even get to print because of my row with the publisher. But very quietly, this album, or this cassette, which is In the Golden Autumn, and now generally considered to be one of our best and definitive DIY, birth of DIY productions, I suppose we call it. If anything we do a production. That was sort of very quietly born to no great acclaim, but we brought it out. I mean, I was unsure doing it because Lowell had left to go to Bath, so it was mainly me. But occasionally, the late Mick Brannan, the great sax player who played on Corridor of Dreams, he popped in for a couple of things and played a blinder. Mick Brannan was a very, very good but avant-garde saxophonist. And because, like so many of us in Weathernow, he kind of liked a big drink, a lot of people, I don't think, realised how good he was, because when he played, you know, really drunk, he sounded like he was, you know, he'd get up on a table or a counter and really blow the bejesus out of this sax. But when he just had a bit of a drink, he could play really well. And I remember I asked him to play something. Hey, Mick, I said, we're doing I think it was a Fool Like You, the end track on In the Golden Autumn. I said, Mick, could you pretend you're Stan Getz or something like that? And he kind of looked at me, because he was a very wild saxophonist, and he said, oh, what, you know, I mean, he said, what, blow melodic is what he called it. And I said, yeah, you know, this is a rock musician talking to a jazz musician. And he said, yeah, I can blow melodic, you know, I could do it, I suppose. And that's what he did. And it sounded bloody great. I mean, he was a great saxophonist, and he was quite unsung. In fact, in the late 60s, Mick had played in a band called The Amazing Band. They are in the books. You can find The Amazing Band. I think there were 3 of them. And they did very out there jazz. I think it was out there, but it was nonetheless at least a footnote in British jazz, if not an actual installation. So, apart from that, and Paul Ridley Thomas, who, just like girl groups, I had him singing some backing vocals on one of the tracks as well, I think on A Fool Like You, and I had Martin Chapman, my old mate, playing the piano on Victorian Society. So we had people dropping in and out. But mostly it was me, by my little self, when I wasn't fretting about why the money wasn't coming through from the book. And sometime in late summer, I got talking to someone from the restaurant where I used to wash up, and I said, how's it going? He said, "Oh, it's been hopeless on Kitchen Boy since you left." And I went, "All right, at least someone thinks I'm good at something." She said she's looking for another one now, and I said, "Is she Penny, who ran the restaurant?" And she said, "Yeah, tell her I'm not doing anything. I've finished my book. I'm getting on with a cassette, and I'm broke. I'd like to come back." And she said, and the back came the message, "She'd love to have you. You know, when can you start?" And I was happy as a pig in shit. I went back to a restaurant with my cheerful mates and all the people I used to have a laugh with and the waitresses, because writing and recording sometimes is a very lonely occupation. And yeah, that kind of kick-started me doing the rest of this thing, because I was getting a bit disillusioned with everything. So we had Please Don't Step on My Rainbow, quite a bit of slightly psychedelic stuff, a couple of instrumentals, Marilyn on a Train. This was a very early Cleaners number, but I think I did it again because the other one had got messed up somewhere. Sandstorm in Paradise was especially psychedelic. I don't always think it works. Holloway Person was better than it deserved to be in a way, and I wish I'd paid more attention to it. It sounds really rough and ready, but it's in great punk spirit. And Ghosts in Doorways is a popular one as well, and that was actually written for a band back in... I wrote that for Jet back in '78, so that was a really old number with new lyrics. And Golden Age Saturday. I had forgotten. This was a good album, and it's a good album again, so more on that later as I remember. It's only by talking about things that I remember them, but if you want the real stories you won't get anywhere else, but from the horse here, and this is his mouth, then tune in again. And don't order anything yet, and keep stum. But we'll do what the Americans can't, the announce, and we'll be bringing this stuff out in a very few short weeks. All right.